Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacalyn at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this special event. Welcome to USA Global TV, and hello to our friends listening on Business Talk Radio. I am Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is Teach the Teacher. Joining me for our show today from Las Vegas, getting up very early, is Dr. Alan Barnard. He is the CEO of Goldratt Research Labs. Let's bring him on. Hi, Doctor. How are you?
Good morning, Jacalyn, to you and the audience.
It's lovely to have you here. And again, thank you for getting up early to be with us. So, Dr. Alan, our show today is Teach the Teacher. And as you know, Mike Ademo is joining us also. He's going to join us at the end of the show. Can you share with us, first of all, a little bit about your background and the work that you do and how you got involved with Mike and the Teach the Teacher project?
Sure. I'm a research scientist. I'm a decision scientist. I went and studied engineering and then psychology and then economics, and then finally did my PhD in management of technology and innovation. What has driven me my whole life is really this fascination and curiosity about decision making, specifically about why good people make and often repeat bad decisions. And like most entrepreneurs, I turned that passion and curiosity into a business. And today I have a research laboratory. We have offices around the world. We work with both Fortune 500 companies, but also with individuals. And one of my passions is really young people. I think it's absolutely critical that young people are taught at school not what to think, but how to critically think about things. And specifically around decision making. We face thousands of decisions every day, what to eat, what to wear, how to get to school, what to respond when somebody says something to us. And this can all be quite overwhelming. The good news is that luckily most of those decisions don't matter when it comes to your life. They might feel very important in the moment, but in the bigger scheme of things, they don't matter. But there's a few of them that really matter a lot, that can be the difference between our success and failure, not just in life, but in our relationships and how we view ourselves. And that's what my passion is. So as part of what we do as a research lab, we donate typically about 30% of our time to give back. And we love being involved with schools and universities where we can share the insights that we've gained into simple lessons that young people can apply immediately to their life. And we've turned some of these methods into simple apps. For example, we have an app called the Harmony Decision Maker app. That's a free app that's available on all the app stores that guides somebody through 5 simple steps when they face any tough decision, whether it is about what to go and study or how to respond to being bullied, or maybe whether I'm ready to get into a relationship. Or it can even be as serious as, sometimes we get that feeling that life is just getting too much, that it's not worth living. And I face this horrible big decision about considering maybe self-harm. It can even be used for that type of decision. So that's a little bit of background. We're a research laboratory. We study why good people make and often repeat bad decisions. And we use those insights to develop simple decision support methods and apps that people from any environment, from any age, and any application can use to help them make better, faster decisions when it really, really matters in their life or in their business.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That's very exciting and relevant and important work that you're doing. And as a decision scientist and also a theory of constraints expert, during this pandemic, you must have seen, like all of us, that people are challenged in even trying to make a decision. Many cases, decisions are made for them because they didn't take action. What have you been finding in terms of the impact of not taking action to make a decision?
When we teach decision making at schools, it's hard to keep the attention of kids. So you have to come up with really simple and innovative ways of teaching decision making. So what I normally do is I get on to the front of the class, if it's a in-person class or on a Zoom call, and I write down an equation, E plus R equal O. And I say to the young people, this is going to be the mathematical equation that's going to govern your whole life. And then I stay quiet. And then, of course, somebody will say, well, what does it stand for? And you say, well, it stands for events plus response equal outcome. E plus R equal O. And then I just stay quiet. And they say, well, how does it work? And I say, well, the events are the things that happen to us. And there could be positive events, like somebody compliments you, or you win a competition, or you end up, getting high scores in an exam that you studied for. Those are positive events. Or you can have negative events. Your soulmate that you committed to, breaks up with you, or you don't do well despite all the preparation, or somebody close to you passes away. These events that happen to you are going to be pretty random. There's going to be positive ones and negative ones. And to a large degree, you can't really control what's going to happen to you. You can probably influence it, but you can't control it. The R part is the response. And that's your response to these events. And that's the only thing in life that you can ever control, is your response. And like the events, you can have a negative and a positive response. So when there's a negative event that happens and you have a negative response, it mathematically gives you a double negative. You've just made whatever happened to you much worse by the response that you've had. And I think when it applies to what happened in COVID, as you mentioned, there's a lot of people that were surprised by this type of thing, even though it was, from a scientific perspective, highly predictable. We knew it was going to happen. We just didn't know when and what the order of magnitude will be. But most people were not prepared. And when it happened, some of the responses were very negative, and it made the situation much, much worse for people. Suddenly, they find themselves stuck at home. All the things that were keeping our attention and distracted from maybe recognizing that there's some kind of expectation gaps in our life, all of that was suddenly gone. And all there was just us and our internal thoughts, and maybe the family or friends around us that we might not always get along with. And that had a really negative outcome. So when you think about a negative event like COVID happening, your response can be negative or positive. If it's negative, it will be a double negative. If it's positive, that positive response, like in mathematics, can somehow cancel out the negative. It might not cancel out the whole thing, but it might make it much better. Your mind can start thinking about, well, okay, now that I have all this time at home, what can I do with it? I've almost always promised I'm going to learn a new language, or I'm going to write that book, or I'm going to reconnect with old friends. How can I use this time to do that? So that's the part where, it's always in our control. We can always make it better or worse if it's a negative response. But if there's a positive response, the same thing is true. If we have a positive event and we have a positive response, we can get a double positive from that. And that's huge. That's the type of thing that the most successful people in life are focused on. They're not only focused on how to mitigate negative events that happen to them and quickly respond to it. Yes, of course, you get disappointed and sad and sometimes even frustrated and angry. But once those emotions go over, you still have the choice to respond positively. What can I learn from it? What opportunities does this bring me that I didn't have? And those were things that you could see people pivoting, right? They would interview 2 restaurant owners, and the one said, my business is destroyed. It's a family business, been 60 years. Suddenly we have nothing. We're going bankrupt. The other business owner in the same street is being interviewed. What happened? He said, business is better than ever. We've got people driving up. We've had to pivot our business model. We're now serving, dinners, etc. And that's what can happen if you have that positive response and you have a positive event that happens to you. You can really blow it out of the water. You could find ways of really finding, new opportunities in life. But if you have a positive event that happens and you have a negative response, you could wipe out that positive event. Somebody like walking up to you and very sincerely saying, Jacalyn, you're looking beautiful today. And you have a choice of how to respond. A positive response would be, oh my goodness, thank you so much. I really needed this. You've made my day. A negative response would be, what do you want? Right? And you can just feel the energy just drops, and the likelihood that that person is ever going to do it again is going to be very, very low. So that's really a critical part of when we look at how people have what the outcome is after an event like COVID. You cannot say it's because of COVID. Yes, COVID was the triggering event that happened. It was a major negative event for some people. For some others, it was a major positive event, right? But it's always the response that determines the outcome. You can choose to have a positive response. You can choose to have a negative response. And learning the difference between those two are fundamentally important in how we face any situation in life.
Thank you, Doctor. That's fascinating that it's actually based and rooted in science. And I'm wondering, when we look at constraints, how does our environment, or the fact that we may be surrounded by negativity or people who are responding to something in a negative way, how does that impact our ability to make a decision?
It's a really interesting question. When we think about constraints in business, it can be like there's a bottleneck currently in the supply of chip manufacturing, that is used in cars and in computers. So that's one type of constraint. There's some resource that I don't have enough of that I need in order to fulfill the demand. But when we apply it to our personal situation, our most scarcest resource is not time. It's not even knowledge or money. It's actually our limited attention. And how we apply that attention, the decision of what we focus our limited attention on, is probably the most consequential decision that we make every single day. And that's the link between what we study from a decision science perspective and a theory of constraints perspective, is that the common element is that we make decisions on how we allocate our limited attention. What we focus on can change our whole life. If we focus on negative things, that's going to have a negative outcome. If we focus on the positive things and the positive response to negative things, we can have a massively positive outcome. So I think that's the key here, is to start realizing that your scarcest resource is your limited attention. And you want to make sure that you allocate it to those things and those people that can really help you achieve the goals that you are passionate about. And that as soon as you realize that you've allocated your attention to someone or something that is actually moving you further away from those goals, then it's absolutely critical that you recognize that immediately, and that you pivot, that you change paths, that you stop doing those things or stop hanging out with those people, and get back on track and focus your attention on those things that really, really matters, those things that can move you closer to the goals that are very important to you.
Thank you very much. It sounds like that is a decision in and of itself as to whether or not you stay in an environment that could be toxic, or you're surrounded by people who are always giving that negative response.
Right. And it's a very fascinating question about why would somebody stay in such an environment, right? We've done quite a few programs with people that are in abusive relationships, not just women, but also men, not just physical abuse, but also mental abuse. And it's very interesting to try and provide them with tools to understand why are they making this decision, because often they can't explain it. And that sort of boils down to one of the fundamentals about decision making, is that when we make decisions, we use our emotions to make a decision. We use logic to justify it. We don't look objectively at things and then decide. We actually decide, and then we try to justify or rationalize it. And when it comes to trying to understand why somebody would make a bad decision could be, I'm staying in a toxic relationship. I'm staying in a relationship where I'm suffering abuse or neglect, or I'm staying in a job that I hate, right? Why would that be? Or I have a bad habit that I don't want to quit for some reason. I struggle to quit. I overeat. I drink too much. I use some kind of, drugs or something. Why would somebody do that? And often, as a society, and even for ourselves, we jump to the conclusion that somebody is just stupid. That's the conclusion, right? They just don't know how positive their life would be if they stop this bad behavior or they get out of this negative relationship. So they either don't know how good their life will be if they stop this, or how bad their life will be if they don't. So what we try to do is we try to educate them, right? For people that smoke, we put it on the packet of cigarettes, how horrible their life will be if they keep on smoking, right? And we tell them how great their life will be if they stopped, as if they didn't know, It's that kind of joke where the woman is in a restaurant and the guy approaches her and says, "Excuse me, ma'am, your smoking is bothering me." And she says to him, "Bothering you? It's killing me." And that's people are not idiots. We know that there's a positive of changing our behavior in a positive way and a negative if we don't. That's not the reason why we get stuck. Why we are stuck is that somehow we associate the positive with this negative behavior or this relationship that we're in, and we don't want to give up that positive. So if you think about somebody that smokes, if you say to them, what is the positive you get, the unique positive you get of smoking that you're scared to lose? Because that could explain why you haven't quit yet, right? It's not that you don't know how good your life will be if you stop smoking, or how bad it will be if you continue. There must be some positive that you get from smoking, or some other bad habit, whether it's drinking too much or overeating or exercising too much or being, obsessed with a partner maybe. There's some positive that you get from that. And a person that smokes might say, well, it helps me to cope with stress. And as soon as they say that, essentially what has happened is they've transferred this assumption or belief that they had, that is the real reason why they haven't stopped, from the subconscious mind into the conscious mind. And as soon as they say that, then the mind can't help it but start checking and challenging that assumption to say, is that really true? Does smoking really help me to cope with stress? Well, people that don't smoke, how do they cope with stress? They seem to be okay. Well, actually, it doesn't help you to cope with stress. It's really that you're starting to run out of nicotine. And when you replenish the nicotine, you get a sense of relief. So it gives you this false impression that you're coping with stress. Oh, now I realize, oh my goodness, the reason why I smoke is because I thought it helped me to cope with stress. Turns out it doesn't. I get fooled. So as soon as I am asked the right question, what's the positive of this negative behavior that you think is unique to this negative behavior, or unique to this situation that you're trying to get out? What is that positive? Write it down or type it into our app, which is called Harmony Decision Maker. And once you type it in there or you write it down, it will look back at you and go, is that really true? And even if it is true, is there not another way of coping with stress that's less damaging to my body? So that is the first reason why we and other people make really bad decisions or choices. It's not that we don't see the positive of making the change or the negative if we don't. It's a fact that we have a fear of losing the positive that we associate with this behavior. For example, somebody that's in a very toxic relationship, if you say to them, well, what's the positive of that relationship? They might say, well, at least I have a roof over my head. Or, well, I know this person hurts me, but they also love me. Where will I find another person that loves me? It took me so long to find somebody that actually loves me. As soon as they say that, as soon as they write it down, as soon as they type it in, immediately try transferring that assumption or belief from the subconscious to the conscious. And when it's in the conscious mind and it stares back at you, then you can check and challenge it. So that's the first reason why good people make and often repeat bad decisions, is that we have an exaggerated fear of losing some positive that we assign to this behavior. But there's a second reason, which is there can also be an exaggerated fear of effort or risk that can block us from making a good change or choice in our life. So that would be the negative of making a good change. What is that? So if I ask somebody directly, so if you literally just stopped smoking tomorrow, cold turkey, you just stopped, you had somehow the inspiration, you just stopped immediately. Do you see any potential negatives in being able to do that? And what I will tell you is that, it's like climbing up a mountain. I see that pot of gold at the top of the mountain, but climbing up that mountain is going to take a lot of effort, and there's lots of risks involved. And it's the exaggerated fear we have of the effort and the risk it will take that often can block us from making those good choices or changes. But the same is true if you ask the right question. So what are you scared of? To make this change, to never lose your temper again, to never overeat again, to never get into the relationship like this, or to get out as soon as you realize this is really a bad situation. What are you scared of? And people have this exaggerated fear of the effort it will take or the risks associated with it. But as soon as you write down all your fears, the mind will start helping you. It will start checking which ones of those can I overcome? Is that really real? Am I exaggerating this, etc.? And that's essentially the methods that we teach and the apps that we've built, is allowing people to discover what these exaggerated fears of loss and fear of effort and risk are, that's really holding them back from living the life that they really want to. It allows them to discover what these limiting assumptions and beliefs are and helps them to check and challenge them.
Thank you so much. I have 1,000 questions I could ask you, but I'm trying to limit it down. So you spoke about this scientific, the foundation, and then of course there's the rationalization that we go through. Where does ego and self-esteem or lack thereof come into play when you look at making decisions? Because many times in my experience, people will make decisions that they know are bad for them because they secretly or not so secretly don't like themselves and are trying to punish themselves in some way because they have low self-esteem.
Right. And the opposite could also be true. You could have very high self-esteem and then make decisions that tries to live up to that expectation that's really bad. So we spend too much, right? Why is that? So when it comes to the ego, etc., it's a very complicated topic, but at the end of it, it's really simple. There's a beautiful quote that have inspired me throughout my whole life. It was by a scientist called Jean-Baptiste Perrin. And he said that the aim of all science is to substitute visible complexity for invisible simplicity. If you think about E equal to mc squared, Einstein's famous equation, it's so, from a mathematical point of view, it's so fundamentally simple. There's 3 variables, and they connected through this little equation, but they explain so much of the massive visible complexity in the universe. So when it comes to decision making, it's kind of the same. There's a lot of visible complexity when it comes to decision making, but there's this invisible and inherent simplicity. Part of it is that we really decide by emotions and we use logic to justify it. And part of that emotion is we really are constantly making decisions to elevate our status or to prevent our status from coming down. And once you recognize that, it will help you to understand why you make certain decisions, but also why other people do. We just had a recent challenge with business, and the challenge was, why are they not buying our amazing product or service? And this is probably one of the biggest frustrations for any entrepreneur, right? You spend your whole life identifying a problem that's really important or urgent to a group of customers. You've developed some kind of product or service that can really solve this problem. You invest all your time and energy of launching this product or service, and then nobody buys it, right? And you just don't understand, why the heck are they not buying? And it's very interesting when you ask that same question through this understanding that people buy things to improve their status, and they will not buy things that will negatively impact their status. So for some people, if you think about, say I was trying to sell consulting services into a company, and the person that's buying that consulting service is viewing themselves as a top expert in their field of supply chain management or project management, and they really need my advice to help them, get over some bottleneck that they're facing that can really change the performance of the whole company. But despite rationally agreeing with everything, they end up not buying. Why could that be? Why wouldn't they buy? And it turns out that their view of themselves, their ego, the status that they view of themselves as an expert, when they invite somebody into their life to teach them about something that they might have ignored or be blind to, in their mind it might devalue their status in society and or in that organization or the way that they view themselves. And that could be one of the reasons why they make this kind of looks irrational decision not to buy, because they are subconsciously so terrified that by buying it will negatively impact their status. So when we look at trying to understand why people make certain decisions, you're absolutely right. Understanding how that decision will impact, or their assumption of how it will impact their status, is often a really good way of understanding why they do something. Another simple example that the audience might associate with is, you think about yourself, why do you lose your temper? Why do you allow yourself to lose your temper and sometimes say really, really nasty things to people that you actually love? Why is that? Well, it can be understood quite fully by understanding that we have an ego, and that when somebody makes us angry, we are protecting that ego by giving it back to them. This is sort of tit for tat, right? And even though we rationally know that when we lose our temper, when we say these horrible things, it's a negative response, right? It can never make things better. It can only make things worse. It's like that double negative that I talked about. There was a negative event that happened. Somebody, made you angry, disrespected you, whether it's, somebody at the bank or your kid that doesn't listen to you. You justify it for yourself that you can overreact and say some horrible things. It can't make it any better. But the reason why is not because we're bad people. The reason why is we have a bad assumption. And the bad assumption there is that somehow it's necessary to protect our ego, and that this is the best way of protecting it. Even though we rationally know, probably if we had responded in kind, with respect, saying that we are very disappointed in this behavior, that will probably have gotten us a much, much, much better outcome. But in the moment, it actually feels good to overreact because of our ego and status. So it's an important thing for people to understand if they're trying to understand why they often make really bad decisions or choices. It's often to do with us just trying to protect our ego. But these protection mechanisms often make things worse. It's like why somebody's jealous, and not just the good jealous type, the really bad jealous type where it completely engulfs them and they can't stop by looking at the phone of their partner and constantly wanting to know where they are at and who they're looking at, etc. It's something that's we do to try and protect ourselves, but actually it ends up just harming ourselves and our partners. So it's a fundamentally important point, as you mentioned, is to understand that many of our decisions are really just about protecting our ego or protecting the status that we have, the way that we view ourselves and others view us. That's why people overspend. That's why they often overeat and overdo many, many things.
It's interesting. In a lot of ways, it seems like if we were able to remove the ego and all the emotion and sort of just be a robot, we would make really good decisions. But
yes, but then life would be really boring and uninteresting, right? We to me, it's part of what we teach, and especially coming back to sort of teach the teacher and working with young people, is it's really easy to make bad decisions. I will ask young people. I said, imagine this: you have a recipe. You have 4 ingredients, 4 steps, 1 temperature setting. How many ways are there to get it wrong? And then they all start giggling. Oh, many, many ways. And you say, okay, how many ways are there to get it right? Kind of 1 way, follow the recipe, right? And that's also true for decision making. There are so many ways to fail. There are so few ways to succeed that when it's an important decision, it's always worthwhile to sit down and think through it. Try to think critically about it. Try to think about the options that you have from all the different perspectives. Don't just look at the pros and cons of making a change, but look at the pros and cons of not making a change, and have some structured way of being able to evaluate that decision and develop better options that has big upside if it works, small downside if it doesn't. And that's kind of what we teach people, and what people get when they use our app. Is our app has been designed to take you through 5 simple steps. Every step has been designed to prevent a common decision mistake that we all make. And by going through these 5 steps, it helps us to view everything objectively, helps us to create better options, help us to think of all the yes buts, all the things that can go wrong, all the reservations that there could be, but use those yes buts to make an even more robust solution. And that's kind of what we're teaching, is that yes, decision making is hard, but there's this profound inherent simplicity behind it. Good people make bad decisions for good reasons. We have to just figure out what these good reasons are, check and challenge them, and develop new options as a result.
Thank you, Doctor. I really find it interesting what you were sharing earlier, especially as a business owner, when you have a product or service or a course or some kind of offering, and you've put the time and energy and money into it, and you think, wow, this is phenomenal, it's amazing. And then no one signs up or no one buys it. It's like,
Yes.
I don't understand what's wrong. So my question for you is, I know you work with children, and you also work with management teams and large organizations. So when you are working with them to understand critical thinking and decision-making process, does that look different if it's a management team as opposed to an individual?
It really doesn't, because people are people, right? And that's been one of our surprises. Is we started working with children for 2 reasons. One reason is that it's something I'm really, really passionate about. I think that in the age of AI and robotics, we're going to have to figure out what are the things that make us uniquely human. And one of the things that make us uniquely human is 2 things. We are creative. We can solve problems in very creative ways, and we have skin in the game, right? If we get it wrong, we pay a penalty. Robots struggle to be creative, and there's no skin in the game for them. So developing our skills to think critically about everything that happens to us, all the goals that we want to achieve, and to be able to have the skills of making better, faster decisions when it really matters, I think in today's environment is going to be more important than ever. So on the one side, we work with young people because this is something I'm really passionate about, is to teach these kids how to think critically and make tough decisions in life. But the second one is more of a kind of from a research perspective, is that kids are brutally honest with you. If you're teaching them something that they don't get, they will tell you immediately. Either tell you, or they'll sleep on their chairs, or they'll get distracted on their phones. So to me, as a research science, working with young people helps us to constantly think about how can we make what we teach simpler, easier, faster to use. Because if it's not easy to use, if it's too complicated, if it takes a long time, people won't use it. And as a result, we've taken some of our programs that were 5-day programs, and now we can do it in a couple of hours because we've had to simplify it. And what's very interesting is you then circle back all the way back to these top executives that went through the 5-day program, and suddenly you show them an animated video that we've created of 10 minutes long to teach the same principle. And they go, oh my God, now I get it for the first time. So at the end of it is people. Good people make bad decisions for very good reasons. The methods and the apps that we've developed help people to discover what those good reasons are, helps them to check and challenge them and develop new options. So yes, the nature of the problems that they face, the nature of the decisions might be fundamentally different, but at the end of it, it's us having to make that decision with our emotions and intuition and logic, and how do we put all of that together to end up making better decisions when it really matters. That's the thing that we all have in common with. I took a class the other day, and we were working with kids about how to respond to bullying. And they looked at me and they said, Dr. Barnard, you're like 6'6" almost, like, have you ever been bullied? And I said, yes. I mean, that's how I learned to stand up for myself. I was bullied when I was a kid. I was, very, very skinny kid, very nerdy, ideal kind of target for bullies, and I had to learn to stand up for myself. But even in business, you can get bullied by a big customer or supplier, right? And developing the skills of thinking about how do I respond when I'm in a situation where somebody is exploiting their power, how best to respond. If you try to fight back, there's a real chance that you're going to be hurt. Is there a way of fighting back that you can do it in a way that's respectful and professional, allows you to maintain your values, and gives you a much, much better outcome? So that to me is the interesting thing, is these challenges that we face about how to respond to other people, trying to hurt us. That's going to be true whether you're 4 years old, and you're being bullied by your older brother or sister, or you're 40 years old and you're a business owner and you're being bullied by either a big business, a customer, a supplier, or maybe the authorities in some way. It's learning how to objectively look at these situations, realize that a negative response will always make things worse, never makes things better. So how can I respond positively? What are my options? Which one will have the biggest upside if it works and the smallest downside if it doesn't? And then go and try that.
And would you say that in order to prevent a negative response, that there has to be some type of actual controlling of our own behavior, so that we immediately want to lash out, and we have to take a step back and calm ourselves down and start to use this decision-making process?
Absolutely. It's very difficult to not react in a moment because we are emotional beings, right? What is really bad is when we don't stop, right? And we keep on going. And you've probably been in those situations. You've seen others being in that situations, and you get into an argument and you can't help yourself initially responding to something that was said that was horrible, that was very disrespectful. But then there's that good advice where it says, stand back, take a deep breath, right? Focus on your breathing. And now think about, what am I going to say next that has a chance to have a positive outcome, right? And probably the next thing to say would be to say, what, firstly, I must apologize for my reaction. You caught me off guard. I reacted very emotionally. I'm sorry for the way that I reacted. This is not going to get us a positive outcome. We're just going to keep on insulting each other. That will just make things worse. So, why don't we just walk away from this, give ourselves some time to think, or if you want to sit down and have a discussion about this, let's do that. Let's try. Here's the rules by which we try to engage now. Let's be respectful. Let's listen and not just wait for an opportunity to talk, etc. So it's very hard to control our emotions in the moment. You almost always can overreact. There's very few people that have the self-discipline of taking the breath before they say anything. That would be ideal, right? But part of it is that when you've made that overreaction and you immediately recognize it, you apologize for it, to say, yes, I had all the reason to respond in that way. That's how I felt in the moment, but I have a value. I want to be respectful. I want to have win-wins. The current way of that we're arguing is not going to get us there. Let's take a pause and try a different strategy. And that to me is the same with like blaming yourself. If you did something really, really bad, right? Good people do bad things all the time. We've developed this ability to blame ourselves and others for very good reasons, right? We hope that it will trigger us to try and learn from our experience. So what I normally do is if I find that somebody is stuck in blaming themselves or somebody else, I draw this sort of inverse U curve, right? I say, well, the vertical axis, the level of blame, right? Or the goal that you're trying to achieve. The horizontal axis is sort of how much you blame yourself, a little or a lot. If you blame yourself a little, your goal goes up, right? So the line goes up. You blame yourself a little bit more, your goal goes up because you're now learning from experience. You're feeling pretty miserable about yourself. You're trying to figure out what did you do, what could you do different. But then there comes a point where if you keep on blaming yourself, initially there won't be any advantage to it. But then after that, you keep on blaming yourself, it will go down. Now it's starting to really hurt you and the people that you care about. So it's that type of thing that says it's almost unavoidable that when we do something bad or somebody else does something bad to us, we immediately blame them, right? That's the emotional response that we have. The question is, for how long should we keep on blaming them, right? Until when is it helpful to you and to them? And we all recognize that there's a point in time where it no longer helps. It's now starting to hurt us and the people around us. And that's the part, is the sooner we can do that. It's like when you study successful people fail all the time. Successful people often can overreact and blame themselves and others. And you've seen those on live shows on TV, right? But what separates them is their ability to recover very quickly. They don't get stuck in that mode for a very long time. They feel disappointed. They feel angry. It lasts for a couple of hours, days, maybe weeks, but then they recover and they go on. Whereas other people get stuck in that emotion and they don't know how to get out. And the way to get out is to simply ask yourself, is this still helping me? This current emotional state that I'm feeling, is it still helping me? What am I still learning from this, right? I'm feeling sad and depressed and angry, etc. Is there still value in this emotion? Because if there isn't, get on with it. And I think that's the way of dealing with it, is to say, yes, if you can catch yourself, to stop yourself before you react emotionally, that's ideal. Always take a deep breath before you respond, especially if it's important. But once you've responded and you realize, oh my goodness, what have I just said? This is not going to make things better. It's only going to make things worse. Immediately interfere with that pattern. Don't allow the pattern to just continue.
I'm actually smiling back here as you're speaking, because I agree with you completely. And you might have had some discourse with someone, you don't see them for a couple of years, then you see them and then they bring up whatever it was years ago. It's like, no, I already moved way past that. Sorry that you're still stuck back there. And at times you have to cut relationships because you're moving on and the other person isn't. They're still with that negative response that's been holding them back.
Yeah, and it's really hard to do that, but it's like the joke, the guy goes into the doctor's office and the doctor says, what's wrong? And the guy says, it really hurts when I move my arm like this. And the doctor says, well, then stop it. It's like, if your current response is not helping but hurting, then just stop it. That's the most obvious answer. To move on is once you find that you've tried your best, you've tried to give people an opportunity to rebuild a relationship. You've given them enough opportunity to think carefully about it, and they still get stuck in that negative emotion. It's better to move on and say to them, listen, you'll always love them. You'll always be here for them. Once they're ready to move on, they know where to find you.
Definitely. I'm really enjoying this conversation with you. We also have Mike backstage. And so I'm going to ask you to assist me in educating our audience about Teach the Teacher and about this initiative and how you and Mike are working together. And then we'll bring Mike out. And just so our audience knows, Mike is currently in Africa, and the technology, I guess the Wi-Fi signal has been cutting out back and forth. So we're going to have Mike come out and be on the stage by himself. But before that, Doctor, can you share a little bit with our audience about Teach the Teacher?
Sure. I only recently heard about it. As I mentioned, we do work with schools and universities all around the world. And I was approached by Mike via social media. after he noticed that the work that we're doing, with schools and suicide prevention centers, and that we have developed some animated videos on YouTube that kids can watch and that can teach them about some of these insights I've shared about how to make really good decisions in life, how to understand why we make bad decisions. And they developed this platform called Teach the Teacher, where they invite special guests that are experts in their fields to share insights and lessons learned with the teachers in ways that is non-scientific, is simple, is actionable, and it allows these teachers to then incorporate that into their lesson plans and essentially bring this knowledge to kids from all over Africa. So it's an initiative that I'm very new to. Mike had invited me to participate in one of the sessions where we actually delivered our lecture via a WhatsApp audio recording. So in Africa, I don't know if the audience knows, but even though there's areas with extreme poverty, most people still have cell phones. There's still relatively cheap access to data. So being able to offer online education via a platform like WhatsApp, where the lecturer records their audio as an audio file on their smartphone and shares it with a group, and instantly the whole group gets that lesson. And when they have access to a Wi-Fi signal, or they have access to data that could be very low cost, they can then absorb that lesson and apply the lessons that they've learned. So it's a very, very efficient and effective way of delivering lessons to teachers, but also to students. So it's been a great honor to work with Mike, and I think that the work that they're doing is really, really inspirational. They can always benefit from funding, so I'm sure Mike will share the link with an audience. If this is an area that you're passionate about, that you would be willing to support them. I'm making a personal pledge today of supporting them, and I would encourage all the other listeners out there, whether you're a business owner or stay-at-home mum, if this is a field that you're passionate about, a little bit of money goes a long, long way for them. Even if you just could donate $5, it would make a big difference in helping them get these messages out to teachers and to ultimately to students, to teach them critical thinking skills, critical decision-making skills.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And for those of you who are listening on the radio and cannot read the banner, the link to donate is www.teachtheteacher.xyz. Or Z, as some would say. So, Doctor, we're going to bring him out, but I want to spotlight you again and put up your banner. If you could share with the audience who you would like to reach out to you and how they can get in touch with you, how they can download your apps, please share that now.
So firstly, it's anybody that's linked to schools or to universities or to other support groups. We've worked with schools and universities. We've also worked with churches that provide sort of lessons to their members. We've worked with centers that deals with people that are struggling with addiction. A big part of struggling with addiction is understanding why we do it and what are the simple ways that we can apply to stop it, even suicide prevention centers. So if there's somebody that believes that their students or members could get value from what we're doing, they're welcome to send me an email on alan@goldratresearchlabs.com. We'll make that available to everybody, or they can just search my name. They can go to dralanbarnard.com. That's my personal website. Or alternatively, they can just connect harmonyapps.com is our website, where we've got all the decision support apps. They can reach out to me using any of those. They can also find me on social media. I've got a YouTube channel. I've got a Facebook channel. I've got Instagram, all under the handle Dr. Alan Barnard. And we can share with them resources. Most of these resources we can provide for free. We can give them access to our apps. We can provide train-the-trainer materials for them. So we'd love to hear from people that think that this could be a value of their students and their members. We can provide them with all the resources they need to make this available to their students or to their members.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to reach out to you to come back on some of our other shows if you're open to it, because I know we're
Sure.
just grazing the surface here with all of your knowledge and expertise. So we're going to bring Mike out, and just again to let our audience know there's going to be a delay. So I will be backstage, and Doctor, if you want to stay around, that's great. If not, I understand. Mike, we're going to spotlight you, and then you can share with our audience about this initiative, and we'll put the link up for people to donate. All right. Thank you so much. Here you go, Mike. Welcome to the program.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Barnard. I was just taking notes and taking notes. It was amazing hearing from you. I've heard this message before when you shared on the group about the art and science of decision making. Thank you so much, Dr. Jacalyn. Thank you so much. So the link to donate is www.teachteteacher.xyz. I would like to thank Dr. Barnard so much for his passion and commitment and support uh, towards this course. And thank you so much, Dr. Jacqueline. You've been so amazing. Thank you so much for your support. Uh, thank you so much. So you can donate as small as you will or as much as you will to help us in a very, very long way, to go a long way in helping us empower as many teachers as possible all around Africa. Our dream is a big one, it's a really, really huge one, but we know it's possible. We can do it. We started already using the resources we have at our disposal. So I believe with more resources, with more funding, there's so much that we can do. We just created our website. We're still working on it, and we intend to make it the largest and the biggest resource center for teachers in Africa. It's going to be amazing, with several hundreds of thousands of courses for free available for teachers in Africa. And people like Dr. Barnard, Dr. Jacqueline, and all the amazing speakers that we have on our platform are also going to have courses there that people can listen to, can watch, and actually benefit from and change their lives with. I believe the change in any nation, change in any country starts with the education sector. And by putting a lot of, like Dr. Barnard said, by putting attention on that sector, we can really have a lot of change coming through for us. Thank you so much, Dr. Jack.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's a pleasure. And again, for people who are on the radio and can't read the link, we would love for you to donate to www.teachteteacher.xyz. Dr. Alan, any final words from you?
No, it just has been a real honor to be invited to this. I hope that what I shared has resonated with people. If they want to learn more, they're welcome to reach out. I have a YouTube channel where we share, hours and hours and hours of keynote talks and lectures about the subject matter. It's something that I'm really passionate about, and just to encourage people to download our free app, to watch all the training, and to apply it to their own life, because ultimately, there's just a few decisions that's going to matter a lot in your life. Getting those right or wrong can make all the difference. So it's worthwhile to think very objectively and learn how to make these difficult decisions in life, how to develop new options that you previously didn't have, that has a big upside if it works and a small downside if it doesn't. I call those the sort of hell yes decisions, big upside if it works, small downside if it doesn't, hell yes, go for it. But if it's the other way, if it has only a small upside if it works and a big downside if it doesn't, I call those the hell no decisions. Stay the hell away from those things. Don't do them. Don't even go there. So just that simple kind of a rule of thumb that says, is this thing going to have a big upside if it works, small downside if it doesn't, then I should do it. If it has a small upside if it actually works and a big downside if it doesn't, just don't do it. Don't even go there. I think that's just simple, practical advice that hopefully people can apply to any decision that they're facing at the moment.
I really appreciate that. That is brilliant. And for people who can't read your banner, please do contact Dr. Alan. His website is www, and it's his name, DrAlanBarnard.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, YouTube, all the social media channels. And you can also download the app by going to www.harmonyapps, which is HARMONYAPPS.com. I could get a 10 in the spelling bee, I guess, or 100.
Yes, and in the app stores, that's probably the easiest going to be, whatever mobile app store you have. We have it in the iOS store for iPhones and iPads, and the Android Google store, as well as Amazon. The app is just called Harmony Decision Maker. So if they type that into the search, they'll be able to get the app downloaded for free. There's a lot of examples in their training videos, etc., that they all will get for free. Thank you, everyone, and thank you again for the invitation. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Mike. Everyone, thank you so much. If you're watching on the live or you watch on the replay, please do subscribe to USA Global TV. You can find all of our shows there. We have about 22 shows each week. Our next show is coming up, and that's The Corner Bookstore with my co-host Diane Floyd-Bain and our guest Teuda Avduli. She's going to be talking about parenting, how to make good parenting decisions. It's funny, after we just had this show with Dr. Alan. Also, I'm going to put up the link again. Please do help support Teach the Teacher initiative by making a donation. The link to donate is here. It is www.teachtheteacher.xyz. All right, thank you, folks. We'll see you back shortly for The Corner Bookstore. And again, please go over to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV, and subscribe. You can also watch our shows on our website, which is USA Global TV. Thanks so much. Thanks, Dr. Alan. Thank you, Mike.